put up the title slide. Mohammed, I'm going to spotlight you now so that when the title slide comes down, you will be the main person that everyone sees.
Okay.
Okay. Title slide is now up.
Is Habibullah Karim is there? Because I saw that there is an email from him that, dear Mr. Sawar, I'm connected to the Zoom link, but it seems the meeting host is still not online.
Yeah, I have to check some,
Habibullah Karim is in the room right now.
He's in the room, yeah.
Okay, everyone is now a co-host. I'm going to take off the ability for people to mute and unmute themselves, so that is our primary security feature for this session. And then, Dory, are you ready?
Yes. Just making some quick adjustments, but yes. Yes, I'll be ready now.
I'll let you do the countdown since you'll be doing the technical announcement.
Okay. Sorry, Hermes, do you want? Sorry, what was that? Okay, so we'll be going live and allowing participants in 3, 2, 1.
Right. A very warm good morning to all of you.
Oh, sorry, Mohammed. Just a moment as while we let participants in.
Okay.
And then I'll also do some technical announcements. And then I'll hand over.
Yeah. Because we have already lost 6 minutes.
Six minutes, yes.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just waiting for everyone for people to connect here. Thank you for your patience. Apologies for running a few minutes behind.
No problem.
All right, a few people still need to connect audio, but in the meantime, I'll welcome everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the 2021 UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. This is a session titled Country in Focus, Bangladesh. My name is Dory from Q Design, and along with Hermes, who's also in the background here, will be your technical facilitators for the session today. The chat function will be available to you, so if you have any questions for the speakers or have any comments, please feel free to insert them there. We will also have live interpretation today from English to Bengali for the main session. Please note that the live interpretation will not be available in the breakout room. However, it is available here in the plenary. So to use the live interpretation function, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window and click your language of choice. It's just, sorry, English to Bengali. Note today that the session is being recorded. If you have any questions about Zoom or require technical assistance, please feel free to privately message myself, Dory, or Hermes using the chat box. I will now hand over to Mohammed. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dory. As I said, a very warm good morning to all of you. And this is my extreme pleasure to invite you all at the Bangladesh conversation of the UN South Asia Forum on Business and Human Rights. Myself, Muhammad Ghulam Sarwar, I'm teaching law at the University of Dhaka and working also as the editor of the Law and Our Rights page of the Daily Star. I'm also working as the consultant for the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator in Bangladesh to write human rights report on the impact of COVID-19. Coming back to the session, as you all know that this June, we will mark the 10th anniversary of the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, UNGPs in short, which are considered as the universal standard guiding business responsibility to respect human rights and to prevent adverse impacts on people. In recent years, there has been a trend at the domestic level to introduce legislation incorporating the elements of UNGPs or formulating national action plan reflecting human rights due diligence concerning businesses. However, the discourse of business and human rights is a very emerging issue, which deserves to be explored and addressed with utmost commitment in Bangladesh. It is commendable to note that business and economy of Bangladesh has seen a tremendous growth in the recent past that helped the country to graduate from LDC to middle income country. However, the other side of the coin is that the human rights of the country remains in a fragile state, which is widely reflected in the international human rights instruments and at the same time reports of their, international and national bodies. While the commitment of upholding human rights obligations is eroding in Bangladesh, that we see in the everyday, life, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the erosion of the human rights protection mechanism. The pandemic also unveiled the discriminatory and unjustified termination of a large number of workers. And in many cases, it was done without providing any remedy to the workers. The pandemic also increased the existing inequalities and discriminatory practices among workers, while informal workers remain the worst sufferers. We have a good number of laws relating to business and work industry, but the human rights consideration is missing in our business laws, policies, and strategies. Again, the implementation of the law sees no to little enforcement. Corporate accountability based on human rights impact assessment is yet to be explored. In this backdrop, the collaborative efforts of the government, employers, organizations, trade unions, national human rights institutions, businesses, civil society organizations, and academia are instrumental not only to promote sustainable businesses, but also to fulfill the human rights obligations. And considering this backdrop, we will discuss about the challenges and opportunities relating to business and human rights in Bangladesh, and we'll reflect in developing a country roadmap while identifying the relevant stakeholders to promote business and human rights discourse in Bangladesh. So before going to the plenary session, let me provide a brief outline of the next 2 hours. We'll have a session of around 45 minutes, which we call the setting the scene session. Then we'll be divided into 4 groups to discuss on selected questions for 30 minutes. And based on the discussion, we'll be presenting or we'll be listening from each group who will present their outcomes based on the discussion in the group. And then we'll wrap up the session with the country roadmap. So with this background, may I now invite Ms. Eni Khan. She's with us and she has she has conducted a preliminary study to assess the state of business and human rights in Bangladesh. This study is conducted by Business and Human Rights Resource Center. And Ms. Eni Khan is the South Asia Researcher and Representative, Business and Human Rights Resource Center. So Annie, the floor is yours.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. So I'll just get started in my presentation. So just to set the context of kind of why we developed this report. So we were invited by UNDP to build upon and develop a national action plan, a national baseline assessment report to hopefully inform the national action plan process of the government of Bangladesh. So next slide, please. So I'll just first explain a little bit why a national baseline assessment. Why is it important and how does that fit into a national action plan? So the United Nations Working Group on Business and Human Rights defines a national action plan as an evolving policy strategy developed by a state to protect against adverse human rights impacts by business enterprises in conformity with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which Mr. Mohammed just alluded to. And most of us are probably familiar with the UNGPs by now. So after a country publicly commits to developing a national action plan, the working group also recommends that governments consult stakeholders to get an understanding of adverse business-related human rights impacts in the country. This process, which is recommended to be in the form of a national baseline assessment, allows all stakeholders to develop a national action plan that effectively addresses the needs of right holders and provides for remedy when these rights are violated. Bangladesh has committed to developing a national action plan, and therefore we conducted a survey and developed this report to assist in the national baseline assessment process, with the main objective being to identify human rights risks in key areas. The report also analyzes existing legal frameworks and their gaps, and likewise identifies opportunities for Bangladesh to align their policies with international human rights standards. Next slide, please. So our baseline report combined comprehensive research of publicly available data, and we also conducted a survey involving 39 stakeholders in the country, including civil society groups, trade unions, and industry associations. And from the civil society organizations that we spoke to, they represented issues such as labor, environment, indigenous peoples, women's rights, land rights, and disability rights. For trade unions, they represented sectors ranging from garments to footwear, and the industry associations that we spoke to were from some of the largest producers such as leatherware and footwear, knitwear, and textile mills. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to share some of the key findings that came out of our research. We had several issue areas that we analyzed and looked at a little bit deeper, so I won't be able to share all of them, but just to pull out a couple of examples. So forced labor and human trafficking. Bangladesh's law prohibits all forms of compulsory or bonded labor, and the country has ratified both ILO forced labor conventions. However, both international and national standards have not been properly enforced to deter violations. And we see now, as a result of COVID-19, as more workers are being pushed into the informal sector, Bangladesh is now being categorized as an extreme risk of modern slavery in the coming years. Freedom of association and collective bargaining. Although Bangladesh has aligned itself with international standards, the country has been encouraged by its international peers through the universal peer review process to ensure that the labor law is properly conformed with the provisions of the ILO standards. As an example, the number of applications to register trade unions that are rejected every year illustrates that there is definitely some limitation on workers' ability to organize. Next slide, please. So as far as occupational health and safety, after the tragic Rana Plaza collapse in 2013, we have found that Bangladesh has definitely made significant efforts to improve its occupational health and safety measures, including adopting the Bangladesh Accord on Fire and Building Safety, which consists of representatives of top brands and trade unions. Bangladesh has not, however, ratified the 2 corresponding ILO conventions on OHS, and there are still legislative gaps in related national laws. Similarly, with indigenous peoples, as we all know, there is a significant population of indigenous groups in Bangladesh, a majority of who live in the Chittagong Hills Tract area. Indigenous communities are not afforded or recognized by most international or national laws. They're only afforded cultural protection. Bangladesh has not chosen to sign on to a more modern understanding of the need of protection of indigenous peoples at this point. Next slide. As far as human rights defenders, we see that activists, journalists, and union leaders are being faced with increased level of threats and attacks on their livelihood as the state cracks down on NGOs and other groups. Bangladesh has ratified the UN Convention against Torture, for example, but has yet to do so for the convention that protects persons from enforced disappearance. It must strongly align itself with international standards to be considered safe for human rights defenders. And lastly, we also evaluated risks with foreign direct investments in Bangladesh, including risks that are prevalent in export processing zones, economic zones, and high-tech parks. The risks include lack of transparency for employment processes and lack of fair inspection opportunities by international bodies, as the Economic Zones Act is the applicable law in these zones, not the national labor law. Next slide, please. So coming to the key recommendations that we shared as a part of our conclusion of our baseline report. So we recommended that the government must provide adequate signs to show they are pledging to adopt mandatory human rights due diligence, including but not limited to environmental human rights due diligence, modern slavery, and human trafficking reporting. And we also would suggest that the government respond to the pandemic by offering public funds to businesses, but ensuring that it is conditional on several funds, including that the funds benefit employees and implement a living minimum wage to all workers. We also recommend that Bangladesh must recognize that as the pandemic brought about a 33% decrease in foreign direct investment, the most vulnerable in the country continue to face devastating challenges in the form of unpaid wages, wage theft, unlawful dismissals and terminations, and assaults to freedom of association. This phenomenon was affirmed by the 33 civil society organizations and trade unions who were surveyed by the Resource Center in this report. So I'll just close by saying these were the main findings, but of course, again, not an exhaustive list. And we hope that this national baseline assessment and the survey that we conducted nationally really informs and helps the national action plan process that the government of Bangladesh has expressed interest in. And we hope to be a part of that process going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annie. You are so timely. So our next speaker is Mr. Habibullah Karim. As you know that there is a growing, tide of mandatory human rights due diligence globally, and it will certainly have, impact on the supply chain of Bangladesh. So how do you think that Bangladesh's business are to respond to these growing expectations, for businesses to be responsible? So Mr. Habibullah Karim, he is the Vice President of the Bangladesh Employers Federation. Mr. Karim, the floor is yours.
Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sarwar. I will just share a couple of slides just to get my points across more cogently. Just give me 1 second. Share content. Can everybody see my slides?
Sure, please.
Okay, all right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is Habibullah Karim. I'm the Vice President of the Bangladesh Employers Federation and also a member of the Business and Human Rights and CSR Committee of the National Human Rights Commission of Bangladesh. So what I'm going to talk about in the 5 minutes allotted to me, just quickly go through what is the situation regarding business and human rights in Bangladesh, and primarily the way forward for us based on the ground realities in this space. So we all are aware of the basic definition of human rights and our do's and don'ts in this area. So I'm not going to go over that. But one thing that is essential for the discussion today is to realize that human rights is no longer a concern just between states and individuals, but also it pertains to the business community. The business and human rights perspective has a lot of different angles to it. Some of it lead to positive outcomes. Some of it caters to mitigating the negative aspects of human rights or non-compliance with such rights. There are many examples throughout the world we can look at. So I'm also not going to go into the details of that, but if anybody is interested, you can look up such cases. So what is the Bangladesh perspective? So of course, some of it, but while Annie has talked about many different areas where the global community, or let's say the UN, perceives there are lapses in worker human rights, but we feel that there is really no significant prevalence of forced labor in Bangladesh today. But human trafficking is an area of concern, and of course, inadequate monitoring of child labor. We know that child labor, by and large, in the organized sector or formal sector, has been addressed properly, very vehemently. But in other sector, informal sectors, there still could be, areas of child labor which needs proper monitoring. And of course, also in the area of, safety, worker safety and occupational safety, those issues also probably needs better attention, both from policymakers and from the industry. In terms of minority groups, of course, there needs to be better attention to mainstreaming them. But, from the industry, Bangladesh has taken measures even for, let's say, catering to employment of physically and mentally challenged, and of course, indigenous groups. So those are, work in progress, and we see, better integration of such communities in the workforce in the future. And another area, of course, is a concern is not the laws per se, but the enforcement of laws when it comes to labor relations or worker rights and issues of that nature. So what is the way forward? So way forward, we see that we probably need to be more attentive to or sensitive to child rights and social protection for children. Of course, good governance is a continuous journey, and we need to continue that and emphasize the values of good governance in all spheres of national life. In terms of traffic victims, how we can allow them to be reintegrated into the mainstream society, we need to look at those. And similarly, worker safety, environmental standards, empowering indigenous people, and issues of those kinds. And finally, promoting employee-employer relationships. So these are we are aware of these pillars of UN guiding principles about human rights and business. Again, this just is there to remind us all what are the issues at hand here. So finally, what is our recommendation? We'd like to recommend that we work along the guiding principles from the UN on worker rights and broadly business and human rights. Expansion of labor courts so that there are better enforcement of labor laws, and more involvement of the National Human Rights Commission in the affairs of worker rights and in this space. And for that, what I'd like to emphasize, I also see a couple of other speakers who are my colleagues on the Committee on Business and Human Rights and CSR of the National Human Rights Commission, which automatically implies that the NHRC is actively seeking out and engaging with the business community to promote workers' rights and basically expand awareness about the human rights and CSR dimensions in business. So basically, in conclusion, what I would like to say is that adoption of policies, voluntary initiatives, and paramount respect for human rights in everything that we do, and continuous scrutiny, and bringing transparency in all such issues, and holding people accountable when such issues are found to be at fault. And this is something that we all need to do as responsible citizens and responsible businesses, not only in Bangladesh, but also as part of the global community. So I'll stop there. And if there are any questions or comments later on, I'd be happy to respond to that. But I would also like to mention that we are very happy to have with us among the speakers, Mr. Kamranti Chaudhary, who is the president of Bangladesh Employers Federation, who I believe will also speak on the other aspects and broader aspects of such issues. Thank you.
Yeah, right. What you are saying, Mr. Karim. As far as schedule, Mr. Nozrul Islam Khan is supposed to be here, to join with us, but due to unavoidable reason, he's unable to attend our session, and he sends his regards and commitment to foster to contribute to this issue. So may I now invite what you are saying, Mr. Karim? May I now invite Mr. Kamran Rahman, the President, Bangladesh Employers Federation. So as you see, the labor rights is one of the core issues in the UNGPs and the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. So how do you see the state of labor rights in the context of Bangladesh, and how we can address these in the upcoming initiative of Business and Human Rights Plan? Mr. Rahman, the floor is yours. Can you please unmute your? Yeah. Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Sarwar. You know, Asia is one of the most diverse regions of the world today, with countries in different stages of development. There are LDCs on the one hand, and G7 country like Japan on the other. There are some countries whose economies are based on agriculture, some whose economies are based on manufacturing, and some whose economies are based on natural resources. Some have huge populations with surplus labor force, while some have small populations dependent on migrant workers. As a result, impact of UN guiding principles on business and human rights, its challenges and opportunities differ widely. Now, if I may address this issue from the point of view of the guiding principles on business and human rights, I think we need to look back a little as to what it's all about. Professor John Ruggie in 2008 was entrusted to come up with a proposal or a concept of human rights and companies based on three pillars. This one is the state duty to protect against human rights abuses through appropriate policies, regulations, and dispute resolutions. Two, the corporate responsibility to respect human rights, to act with due diligence, to avoid infringing on the rights of others. And three was access to effective remedy of victims of human rights abuse, including through court or in-house processes. One of the biggest challenge in a country like Bangladesh is informality, and I think the same goes for many other countries in Asia. Because the informality is widespread. It is in this sector where challenges to protect human rights are the greatest and most prevalent. Therefore, measures to facilitate transition to formality are key to ensure broad implementation of the fundamental principles and human rights. You see, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, adopted the Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work way back in 1998. The declaration committed members to respect four fundamental principles and rights at work: freedom of association and collective bargaining, elimination of forced and compulsory labor, elimination of discrimination in employment and occupation, and abolition of child labor. Now, Bangladesh has ratified 7 out of 8 core conventions based on the fundamental principles and rights at work. The only one that we haven't ratified yet is the Convention on Minimum Age. And we are actually in the process of considering ratification of the Minimum Age Convention. Now, what is the real problem here? We have ratified all the core conventions. We have enacted laws based on all the core conventions, but there are challenges in actual enforcement of many of the laws in many areas in our economy. The main reason again is because we have a huge informal sector, something to the extent of around 85% or 87% of the total labor market in Bangladesh is in the informal sector. And it is easier said than done that we will see to it that we will ensure enforcement of all labor laws in all areas, including the informal sector. In the informal sector is huge. You know, we have a total labor market of around 55 to 60 million people. But again, if 85% of the entire labor market is in the informal sector, you can well imagine how difficult it is to ensure enforcement in the entire labor market. Of course, we are trying. As far as the formal sector is concerned, although it is small compared to the overall labor market, we are trying to see to it that the laws are enforced. But as far as the informal sector is concerned, it is a huge challenge for us. I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rahman. You are very timely and you focused on core issues of business and human rights discourse. Now, let me invite Mr. Mobeen Jinnah. He is the Executive Director of the Community Development Association. So you have, as you all know, that you have extensive experience on protecting rights of marginalized communities. So how do you think the policy documents such as the National Action Plan or any kind of national framework have in the past that help to protect the rights of marginalized or the vulnerable sections of the society? Mr. Jinnah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Ghulam Sarwar. And now I'm going to present my presentation. Good morning and have a nice day, and welcome you to a presentation on business and human rights in Bangladesh: issues, obstacles, drivers, and recommendations, as stated by Mr. Ghulam Sarwar. I will remain confined within my land-related activities. So I have been working with the marginalized group in the rural area since 40 years. And based on my experience, I have negotiated with different stakeholders and actors all over the world for formulation of the different kind of the legislation, how to have the access to the different laws and opportunities from the state. So the initially we have started the initiative on United Nations Guiding Principle (BHR) in Bangladesh from 2018. It's a very formally, but initially, the process is initiated in Bangladesh by CDA and other organizations like ALRD, Urban, Nagorik Uddog, Kepeng Foundation. We are all international land coalition members with the financial and technical assistance from Asian NGO Coalition, Land Watch Asia, and ILC with its commitment-based initiative, 9 and 10 out of 10, to work together in 6 countries, 3 from SAARC and 3 from ASEAN countries in Asia, ensuring recognition and facilitate to protect land rights as human rights using the UNGP BHR by the government, private sector, and CSOs as a whole. Bangladesh is a signatory to 8 out of 9 core human rights treaties. The first meeting held in NHRC office in Dhaka and 3 consultation workshops are organized with the participation of NHRC UNDP officials along with CSOs to regulate UNDP BHR with 3 pillars and RAI through advocacy for formulation of National Action Plan in Bangladesh. NHRC and CSOs signed the Bangkok Declaration in 2018. National Action Plan towards BHR, 2 policy reports are published in 2018. One is Policy Brief towards Bangladesh National Action Plan, and another one is Bangladesh Land Monitoring Report. Further reports are being published by CDA and Asian NGO Coalition. UNDP Bangladesh conducted a national baseline assessment on stakeholder mapping and their engagements, a state of judicial and non-judicial mechanism for remedies. One of the major issue is farmland shrinking due to business operations, increasing trend of commercialization of agricultural land and value chain development. Around 2,096 bigha of farmland and water bodies per day were lost to non-agricultural uses in the decades since 2003, the study says. 80% of the lost lands were converted into homestead, according to the study team led by Professor Dr. Abul Bakr, a renowned economist from Dhaka University. The second largest chunk, 17.4%, was eaten up for the construction, taking the vital resource away from food production. The other major identified issues are industrialization and urbanization, infrastructure development, and investment by the government and multinationals, shrinking CSO's space, deforestation and destruction of hills, no proper implementation of CHT Accord in Bangladesh. So land grabbing, nature of land grabbing effects in Bangladesh. Disempowered people in the country are evicted and even displaced forcefully. Indigenous people are often forced to migrate from their ancestral land. Land rights defenders are killed. Women are raped by land grabbers. Neither state protects nor formulates any mechanisms legislatively. Multinational companies undertook various development programs without FPIC and legally binding instrument with local communities. The vested property of thousands of ethnic and religious minority families have been grabbed. The next, obstacles and drivers. Development projects undertaken without consent from local indigenous people. Corruption is in land administration, others. Somewhere, some of the political influences are there. Our expectation is recognition by NHRC or NHRIs manifested in National Action Plan and policies, prepare annual state reports, engagement in formulation or monitoring action plan, involvement of CSOs in the national and regional discourses. Some key stakeholders we have given to you: state agencies, institutions, business community, trade bodies and trade unions, NGOs and CSOs, multilateral and bilateral development partners, media, researchers, academia, and lawyers too. And some recommendations in terms of the protect, building awareness, popularizing the issues, formulating rules, regulation, and compliance with legally binding instruments in terms of the paying the respect, distribution of compensation, tax payment can demand building transparent and accountable system, participatory democracy. And finally, in terms of the remedy, updated database building solidarity for land defenders, a formulation of national action plan. Thank you very much for your patience and stay safe. If any, you
Thank
can
you.
ask.
Uh, our next speaker is Ms. Nazma Begum, President. She is the President, Shomilito Sramik Union, Natural Benin. Ms. Nazma, as you see, the widespread, violation of labor rights, especially in the pandemic, and we also see the labor rights movement, particularly from through trade union workers, and also there are some challenges. So, how do you see how we can, build an informed, BHR informed the labor rights movement in Bangladesh? Ms. Nazma Begum.
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার। শুভ সকাল সবাইকে। আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আমার নাম মোসাম্মদ নাজমা আক্তার, ন্যাচারাল ডেনিমস লিমিটেড সম্মিলিত শ্রমিক ইউনিয়নের সভাপতি। স্যার, আমার যেটা প্রথমেই বলার সেটা হচ্ছে যে অধিকার, আসলে অধিকার কি সেই বিষয়টা আমাদের অনেক শ্রমিক ভাই বোনেরাই বুঝে না। তো আবার অনেকে বুঝেই না যে আসলে অধিকারটা কি। তো সেই বিষয়ে আমার এতটুকুই বলার যে অধিকার বিষয়ে যেন সকল শ্রমিক ভাই বোনরা যেন জানতে পারে এবং বুঝতে পারে, সেই জন্য যেন আমাদের শ্রমিক ভাই বোনদেরকে প্রশিক্ষণের ব্যবস্থা করা হয়, এটা আমার বলার। আর একটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের বাংলাদেশে আসলে শুধু আইন অনেকই তৈরি করা হয়, কিন্তু আইন ততটা সেভাবে প্রয়োগ করা হয় না। তো আমার একটাই অনুরোধ, যেন আইন তৈরি করার পরে সেটা যেন কার্যক্রম সেরকম ভাবেই হয়। তো আরেকটা যেটা আমার বলার আছে সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের বাংলাদেশে গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে অনেক ফ্যাক্টরিতে আসলে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন কি সেটাও জানে না। তো আমার যেটা ইচ্ছা এবং আপনাদের কাছে যেটা চাওয়া, যেন আমাদের বাংলাদেশে প্রত্যেক ফ্যাক্টরিতেই ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করা হয়। তো আমাদের তাহলে একটা বলার মতো জায়গা তৈরি হয়। যেরকম আমাদের ন্যাচারাল ডেনিমসে আগে আমরা জানতাম না, বুঝতাম না যে আসলে দাবিনামা কি। তো আমরা পরপর 2টা দাবিনামা উত্থাপন করেছি, সেটা থেকে যে আমরা আসলে অনেকটা উপকৃত। যেরকম সরকার থেকে 5% স্যালারি নির্ধারিত করা আছে, সেক্ষেত্রে আমরা পাচ্ছি, সে থেকে আমরা পাচ্ছি 7%। আগে আমাদের টিফিন বিল ছিল 15 টাকা, সেখানে আমরা পেয়ে এখন 20 টাকা। আর আমাদের স্যানিটারি ন্যাপকিন বিনামূল্যে দেওয়া হয় সকল শ্রমিকের জন্য। আমাদের ফ্যাক্টরিতে 8000 শ্রমিক আছে। আর আমাদের 3 মাসের কোনো ঈদ বোনাস দেওয়া হতো না, এখন সেটাও আমরা পাই। আর আমাদের ফেয়ার শপের কথা বলা আছে এবছর, 2 মাসের ভিতরে আমাদের ফেয়ার শপের ব্যবস্থা হবে আমাদের অফিসের ভিতরেই। আর একটা হচ্ছে স্যার যে সরকারের কাছে আমার একটা চাওয়া, যে আমাদের গার্মেন্টস শ্রমিকের জন্য যেন রেশনের ব্যবস্থা করা হয়। আর এতটুকুই আমার বলার ছিল। সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে, আমাদের সাথে জয়েন করেছেন এবং আপনার মূল্যবান মতামত দিয়েছেন। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। So our next speaker is Ms. Mehruna Chaudhuri. She is the National Consultant for Business and Human Rights, UNDP. So, Ms. Mehruna, I would like to request you to cover the role of international organizations and development partners in promoting business and human rights agenda, in particularly in the context of Bangladesh. Ms. Mehruna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sarwar. I will be showing my slides for presentation. I would like to thank you for giving me the floor, and thanks to the previous speakers for giving their valuable comments and inputs for this session. Okay, so if we look at the trend of the socioeconomic indicators of Bangladesh for the last about 15 years, we see that Bangladesh has achieved remarkable progress in many socioeconomic indicators. There has been growth in per capita income, poverty rate has fallen down drastically, There has been an increase in life expectancy. Literacy rate has also increased, and there has been a decline in child mortality and maternal mortality rates. All these changes have improved the situation of Bangladesh, and these have been possible due to the collaboration among the various actors, the government, the private sector, civil society organizations, and development organizations and partners. Now, these organizations, the development organizations and partners have contributed to the development of the sector of the economy in many ways through their advocacy and capacity building initiatives. Through in different times, they have provided knowledge and intellectual materials for the different organizations, for the government, and also they have provided technical and financial supports in many projects that have led to the development of these indicators. These organizations have like ILO and UNDP and many other development organizations have also contributed through their uh, uh, various actions in developing the business and human rights related issues. These are some of the issues that they have contributed to, and they have done this through analyzing the scenario and the changes that have taken place in these variables. They have done comparative analysis of the statistics of different countries of the region and around the world, and that has helped to understand the situation, the scenario of our country. They have lent technical support by various intellectual materials. UNDP's Business and Human Rights Program has address these SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and UNDP's this program has facilitated the promotion of regional approach. It has facilitated researches on how many issues can be brought into the research area regarding business and human rights. Focus has been done on small and medium enterprises, the informal sector, and raising awareness about policy changes regarding the policy changes on the global phenomena. This has been also brought into the program agenda. Despite the various efforts of the various actors, still there are some challenges prevailing in the business and human rights issues in Bangladesh. We have seen some from Annie's presentation. There is child labor, and the country is faced with the risk of modern slavery. We also see that the FDI has gone down, has been is seriously affected through the business and human rights issues. But and during the COVID-19 pandemic, these challenges were more revealed to some extent, and there was a need that the need has been felt to develop more response and recovery measures for addressing business and human rights issues. These would include strengthening collaboration among the various stakeholders. Bangladesh has a large number of laws, policies, and rules addressing the various socio-economic and environmental issues, but there is lack of enforcement and implementation of these regulatory instruments. So monitoring mechanism needs to be developed. And in this case, this focus needs to be given on that. Increase engagement of businesses and stakeholders is necessary in the policy formulation and also developing remedy frameworks. And access to remedy is this is a very serious issue for Bangladesh. Despite that support given to various victims, there are various judicial and non-judicial mechanism available, but the lack of access to this prevailing mechanism in Bangladesh has led to the vulnerability of women and many vulnerable people. And during the pandemic, large number of incidents occurred, we know that which has resulted in human rights abuse, and where victims have not been able to get access to the remedy. So these needs have to be focused into and addressed. Now, I will wrap up my discussion with some strategies that are needed for the business and human rights area. And here, the development organization and development partners can contribute, can play a role here. Firstly, for raising awareness on UNGP and human rights due diligence. Secondly, supporting state agencies for developing their policy which will incorporate the UNGP principles into that. And capacity building of businesses is required because for undertaking human rights due diligence into their supply chain, that is to adopt human rights due diligence within the stakeholders very much necessary for addressing these issues. Protecting human rights defenders, that is necessary. On this has to be done among the state agencies and various stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Mayorona, for your, brilliant presentation. Now, I would like to call, as per schedule, though we are supposed to call Professor Rumana Islam, but as I know, Dr. Masroor, you have another engagement and you need to leave early. So may I take permission from Professor Rumana to be after Dr. Masroor?
Absolutely fine. Thank you. No worries.
Thank you, ma'am. So Dr. Masroor, as you know, he is the member of the Business and Human Rights and CSR Thematic Committee, National Human Rights Commission of Bangladesh. So as you have already heard, the role of National Human Rights Commission in Bangladesh. As a member, how do you see the role of an HRC, and how do you want to take this, discourse? Or how do you, what would be your role to promote this discourse in the context of Bangladesh? Dr. Masroor?
Thank you, Mr. Sarar, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. Let me first thank UNDP and other organizers for putting together this very timely initiative and very timely debate and dialogue on the human rights, linkages between human rights and businesses. I think it could not have been a more apt timing for Bangladesh, which is prone to sort of make a leapfrog jump, in terms of its economic and social aspirations as it tries to become an upper middle income by 2030 and a developed country by 2041. So your question, why, how does the National Human Rights Commission's Committee on Human Rights and Business want to sort of proceed forward? What are the priorities and what would be the approaches? To understand that, and I'm very privileged to join here by my fellow committee member, Mr. Habibullah Karim, who is also a very active participant in that committee, as well as represent the business community. I think as he would agree with me, and as would, I'm pretty sure all of you would agree with me, a lot of this impetus on better linkage and effectively linking business and human rights in Bangladesh, it's grounded in both how Bangladesh wants to, it's grounded in Bangladesh's aspirations to become an upper middle income and a developed country, whereby the role and contribution of the private sector is going to significantly be upgraded. Of course, the private sector has played the engine of growth role, creating employment, jobs, providing the economic opportunities. But as Bangladesh tries to sort of deepen its development foundations, deepen its poverty reduction drive, enhance its growth, bring in more investments, exports for creating the more and better jobs, the role of private sector is going to be actually it will be enhanced manifold, as well as it will be multidimensional. So it is very important that Bangladesh really start, addressing this issue, which it has been over the last decade or so, at a steady pace. But Bangladesh now needs to fast pace how it links human rights and businesses and brings in the right tools, legal and otherwise, judicial and non-judicial, and brings in the right monitoring and implementation mechanisms. So uh, the committee's responsibility and role could not have been more sort of well-timed as well as more important. We also know that Bangladesh is about to graduate. It has qualified to graduate out of the LDC list and move into a developing country by 2026. In 2026. Now, what happens? Once the Bangladesh is out of the LDC list, many of the let's say international regulatory forbearance from trade and investment perspective. Many of the exemptions it enjoys as an LDC country are going to be all withdrawn. And Bangladesh, like most other developing economies, emerging economies, will be under greater scrutiny in terms of how it maintains or what level of quality standards it maintains in terms of business and human rights. So Bangladesh needs to, it is again another rationale why it is an important agenda for Bangladesh to address the human rights and business and establish very strong foundations, implementation and monitoring mechanisms. You also know that Bangladesh is making strong efforts to bring in greater FDI, foreign direct investments, to break into new products, new markets, to enhance its exports or contribution or integration with the global economy to greater trade. Now, the way the world is moving, consumers, buyers, international production and investors community, there is a greater scrutiny in terms of how businesses maintain economic, social, and culture related human rights in their operation, whether it's the equal opportunity to all groups, equal treatment, issues of child labor, environmental responsibility, and many others. So Bangladesh has absolutely all the imperatives to actually strengthen further its efforts to go for a more effective linkage between human rights and business. Now, the National Human Rights Committee's Commission's Committee on Business and Human Rights, it has just started work very recently. There is a committee. The first committee meeting happened, just earlier this week. Some of the important agenda for the committee in the coming months and the coming years are going to be putting together, first and foremost, putting together a strategy in the form of a national action plan, which will identify the priorities for Bangladesh, the challenges, the gaps, and the tools that Bangladesh needs to put in place, both in terms of legal instruments as well as other or beyond legal instruments that need to be in place in order to strengthen human rights in business and economy. So in order to do that, the committee is looking forward to start dialogues involving the right public and private sector stakeholders. So bringing all the right stakeholders and the champions to the table in order to impress upon them through the opinion leaders to a greater public is the importance of human rights adherence and in the business. So the dialogue is also going to hopefully lead to awareness, and for which the committee is planning to roll out a number of awareness programs, because what we felt is, and it is not only specific to Bangladesh, it happens and it's very common in many developing countries, the awareness around human rights and business is very low. Awareness around human rights and politics and government, that's very high around the world. But when it comes to linking business and human rights, that's very low. And that's one area where the committee is planning to work very strongly. And then focus on the particularly, of course, protect, respect, remedy, all are important. But in Bangladesh, the remedial avenues and options are quite limited. So the committee is looking forward to work strongly to create options or avenues for the affected to actually come and avail remedial measures for any human rights option. So in the interest of time, I'll stop here. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mashroor. I'm pretty sure that you will be doing great since you have extensive experiences in policy formulation and reform. May I now invite Professor Dr. Rumana Islam. She is the Professor of Law, University of Dhaka. As we all know that we have heard a lot about from different stakeholders about the state of business and human rights and the role of different stakeholders. But one thing is very important to mention is that the discourse of human rights and business is rarely, I mean, known to the academia. And but the importance of, I mean, business and human rights education is very instrumental. I mean, to familiarize the, I mean, concept, and at the same time to gain in-depth understanding on the issue, as Dr. Mashroor has just highlighted that there is a widespread lack of, I mean, understanding on the issue of business and human rights. So given that, as an academic, how do you see the discourse of business and human rights in Bangladesh, and how we can, I mean, go ahead, what could be the possible way outs? So Professor Dr. Rumana Islam, ma'am.
Uh, Thank you, Sarah. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. A very good morning to all of you who have joined us in this session from Bangladesh and abroad. And I also thank UN Business and Human Rights for this very timely initiative. As a brief response to your question, for the sake of time, I would like to say that as an academician, when we are given a problem or when we try to look into a matter, we always try to get out of the canvas to see the full picture. So therefore, to really look into the discourse on business and human rights from Bangladesh perspective, to get a complete picture, we also need to see it from a very macro level. I think many of the things already have been highlighted by Kamran Rahman and Mashroor Rahman just previously. What I would like to emphasize more on this, that the economic development of Bangladesh has been tremendous. And we have actually done very well in terms of GDP, GNP, and all other different development indexes. But in this today's world, not only the economic development in terms of those economic terms is good enough to survive in this world, and especially that there are two challenges that Bangladesh is going to face in near future. One is after the graduation of LDC, all the challenges that it is going to face, because it's not going to anymore enjoy all the facilities that it has been enjoying for last few years, a couple of decades, as well as the threats and challenges that has been posted by the pandemic. So to overcome these challenges, Bangladesh actually needs to have a very effective macro level planning to how to overcome these challenges. And in terms of business and human rights discourse, I would like to say that obviously the human rights issues in terms of business has not been in the center of discourse, in at least in Bangladesh, in terms of both at the academia and in the practical level. It was not until that we had this UN guideline on business and human rights, or what we call the Raju principle. And as Mr. Rahman had highlighted, that it had three pillars. One is the state level duty, corporate bodies, their duties, and how to make an access or effective access to effective remedies. So in going that, when I say that we need to think about at the micro level, first of all, obviously we need to have a national action policy. And if we look into the region, actually the whole South Asia has been quite slow in response to the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. We just have heard that the National Human Rights Commission is taking initiative, which is really something very positive to hear. But also at the same time, from my perspective, since I work more on international investment law, I would say that the major area of the business sector in Bangladesh is regulated by FDI. And if we want to incorporate human rights and business in a broader perspective, there is a strong requirement that Bangladesh needs to have both at the national and international level a legal regime that would actually protect and promote human rights in the business sector. So in terms of international law, Bangladesh has signed different bilateral investment treaties, FTA, and there is a strong absence of human rights commitment on those treaties. So it's a time that Bangladesh should revise those bilateral investment treaties and make that in terms of standards of human rights and business, because we can have so many good examples of this new generation of bilateral investment treaties, which actually does address the issue of human rights and foreign direct investment. So since a very good number of the business sector in Bangladesh, we get the foreign direct investment. So it's now time that we should have the legal mechanism to enforce that all this foreign direct investment that is coming to Bangladesh, both the foreign investors and their local partners have a strong commitment, and they are obliged to take issues like unregulated labor, child labor, lack of security in workplace, other protection against harassment, gender discrimination, violation of labor law standards, and all kind of discrimination. So unless and until you have a very strong legal mechanism, it's difficult when it comes to implementation. And also at the national level, we have so many laws regulating business and human rights, but the core laws that regulates business and human rights, especially if we think about the export processing zones on specialized economic zones, we also need to revise those laws that how they can address the issue of human rights and business. Because after those very unfortunate events in Rana Plaza or Tazreen Garments, we have seen that there is a strong lack of legal protection in terms of enforcing human rights in business. In terms of, as an academician, we are discussing about the National Action Plan, but in that I would like to emphasize on few things, because when we say business and human rights, obviously there is a strong lack of understanding what is meant by human rights in business sector, those who deal work in the business sector. And also at times there is a confusing understanding of the earlier concept of corporate social responsibility with that of human rights. But there is a sharp construct distinct between what is CSR and what is human rights. So I think if we really have a national action plan, as Dr. Mashur was saying, then I think these are the areas that needs to be taken into account. And whatever national action plan that we adopt Bangladesh, I think it needs to be coordinated. It needs to be a multi-stakeholder approach, integrating all range of actors, not only the National Human Rights Commission or non-governmental organization, but it needs to also include people from the very ground level, like the workers, the employees, the workers' representation. And most importantly, whatever national action plan that we take, it should be tailored and it should be taken into account considering our social and economic context. Because if we just adopt a national policy, because if we see there are many good number of countries, actually like 27 countries, which actually have adopted a national action plan or plan of actions in terms of in accordance with the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. But for Bangladesh, since I have highlighted that these two very challenging situation, one is after the LDC graduation, and another as a post-pandemic situation, Bangladesh needs to have a national action plan of action, which will actually address the social and economic context, considering these two challenges of Bangladesh, so that we can have actually a very effective, fruitful national plan of action in terms of implementing the UN guiding principles. Because without that, it will be just simply another national plan of action that we do not actually, in the past, we do not have a very fruitful experience, successful experience in Bangladesh, having this all kind of policies, national level policy and action plan. So these were my few suggestions as an academician, and I would really like to see how things come up in terms of the actions that the UNGP, UN and National Human Rights Commissions have taken place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your brilliant thoughts and inputs about the NAP and the whole discourse. So we are basically at the end of the first session. So now we will hear from the Ms. Salima Ahmed, who is a member of parliament. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining with us. We truly understand that you have a busy schedule, but you have given time from your, valuable time. And ma'am is also the president Bangladesh Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So as you see that we have heard from all the speakers about the challenges and the prospects of integrating UNGPs into the context of Bangladesh. So as you understand, there is a commitment from the part of the government that we need to take away, that we need to foster, that we need to promote. As a member of parliament also, and as a, definitely the president of the Women Chamber of Commerce and Industry, how do you see this discourse in Bangladesh and how we can, go ahead? Ms. Salima Ahmed MP.
Thank you very much. Very good morning to all of you. It's a very difficult question, and it's very broad. So I'd like to focus on, because I deal with women, and I'd like to focus on that. Because as you know that when we talk about women in the garment industry, when you talk about women in the as a agri land, or a woman in a different platform, or the in the informal sector, what is the impression? Mostly the impression are that they are not having equal wages. They are not having a enabling environment. The Constitution of Bangladesh guarantees equal rights to men and women, which we all know. But also a law has been placed in 2006, Bangladesh labor law, which protects the fundamental rights of women workers, including the rights of maternity leave. And Bangladesh also ratified CEDAW, as well as ILO Convention 3. But one of the things which also I'd like to mention today, because as we are talking about our existence during this COVID pandemic, and Bangladesh government has taken a very strong initiative that when there was a shutdown in Bangladesh for 2 or 3 months, that time all the garments industries was closed. But government announced stimulus package so that no garment workers are unpaid. And not only that, because of digital Bangladesh, our Honorable Prime Minister, who always spoke and also has created Bangladesh, giving a technology-based Bangladesh, where everyone has mobile. I think that's also one of the step forward, because women and men can have an access to different agencies if they have any need. And in the stimulus package, what it has been done, that there was a doubt, the owner was in crisis, and if they don't get these wages on time, or if it is delayed, so it was given directly to their mobile. Each worker received that one. So, and also, if you see that, when we, talking about the compliances, even in the garment industry, because I'm talking about garments industry because a large number of women are there. When the first 10 green factory was established, 7 was from Bangladesh. So lots of negative thing has come up, because I was searching, I was trying to find out the condition of Bangladesh workers and employees, and researchers. I think they love to talk negative with respect to all the researchers, but there are positive initiatives also has taken by the private sector. Now there are factories, even during the pregnancy time. I'm not talking of the maternity leave, which has been implemented, but during the pregnancy time of that worker, nutrition food extra also has been served. So that also news which we are getting it. And if you see, during the corona time, all the social safety has been taken by the private sector. Even in the garments and all other industries, you will not find a big information that the private sector has not taken initiative to save. In the pandemic, that is the ultimate human rights, right? Sanitizing, giving PPE, having masks. But that has been really taken care by the private sector. So things, I know many things is not doing according to the law, but that awareness is there. Awareness, we need to talk more, we need to disseminate more, we need to educate more. And you'll be very happy to know, I'm sure all of you know, and I'm very happy personally, because in 17 November, in the parliament, in the voice, we passed the bill that women, if any women are raped, the rapist has been given the highest punishment, which is the death penalty. So this is also another, step by protecting women. So lots of things are happening, but one of the things we have to take care of the the law, the law agencies like police, the community people, the chairman, the union parishad. So it has to be from the grassroots. We always talk about the policymakers, we always talk about the ministers, we always talk about the government, but we need to develop in such a way that in the community level things are discussed and we talk about it. And we need to engage more community leaders, we need to engage more women into this process, because women rights are human rights, and that is what we need to establish. And the best part of Bangladesh is that our constitution gives equal rights to men and women, and we need to implement that. And also I would like to tell you that this is something which is no country has given, that in Bangladesh, women entrepreneurs get loan from the bank without collateral and the lowest rate of interest. And this is not anywhere in the world. And each branches, not each bank, each branches of all banks must give a loan to a woman. There is a woman dedicated desk in all bank, and the camel rating of bank will be lower if they don't give 15% loan from the SME loan. So you can see that policies are very good policies, and we can say that some are implemented, some are not. But because of the policies, women are coming up, which is establishing their rights. So we should not be very scared, but definitely our voice should be raised. We need to talk more like this. As I said, that I had another engagement, but I always want to raise voice about that there are domestic violence. We need to educate our men and women, because it's not only the case of women, the child rights, the father who abuses not only the mother, but all the family members. So these are something the social taboos are there, and we need to talk and we need to implement it. Thank you very much for giving.
Thank you very much for your valuable inputs and thoughts. So we'll be jumping into the breakout session, but before that, we'll take a screenshot, to take a photo. So I'll request all the participants to please switch on your, video so that we can take a picture. So, Dory, you please go ahead with your announcement and the screenshot.
Thank you, sir. Seems like we've got some people on screen here. Should we wait a little bit more? So while we're waiting for everyone to turn on their videos, just a quick announcement that we'll be sending you into breakout rooms for the working group portion of the event. You'll be randomly assigned a room, and we'll move you into the rooms. If you need any sort of support for the breakout rooms, then please privately message myself or return to the main room, and we'll provide you support. Okay. All right, so it looks like we have about 12 people on video, so just got that. Okay.
Okay.
So we'll be sending
everyone, please switch on your video, please.
We'll give everyone another 10 seconds to turn on your video to be part of this group photo before we go into the breakout rooms. Thank you so much, and I will notify you when we take that photo. Okay, another 5 seconds to turn on your video for a group photo. And I will go ahead and take the photo now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. Back to you, Dory.
Thank you, Hermes.
So our speakers, you can still stay with us in the group discussion, and hopefully we'll have a fruitful discussion with your contribution and cooperation. So please, Dory.
All right, opening all rooms now.
Right, welcome back. So, all the groups are here. MD Siddiq and Mustafa.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm sure you have got a, tight schedule during the group session. As you understand that we have accommodated a good number of speakers in the plenary. So that basically curtailed our, group session, but still we'll be now hearing from you. So all other group moderators are here. Except there is group 3. Oh, Miss Mehrona is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
great.
Okay. Great. So, we'll be hearing from you, but again, since time constraint, we'll be hearing from you. Each group will be given 3 minutes for your presentations. So what you have just discussed in the group. So may I now invite the group 1 moderator? It's MD Mustafa Hussain, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So thank you very much. Actually, the group was so diverse that we have been indulged into the discussions, and we took quite a longer time in the first question itself. I had a member from parliament, I had a civil society members, organizations, employers organizations, representatives. So they have given excellent feedback on the issues and highlighted from their perspectives. If I move to question 1, there were 3-4 pressing issues they have highlighted. The question was what are the most pressing business and human rights issues in Bangladesh. And the first one was highlighted as informal workers regulations. Unfortunately, we don't have any legal mechanisms. And I think that's really a very important point highlighted by the concerned individual experienced persons. Then child labor is another issue, and then mobilization of people. What does that mean? That the transformation from rural to urban, and thereby, if you look at the economic, social, and cultural rights, how these are being affected, are all, and also particularly the economic rights of individuals. So these all are highly, in challenge, and there comes to the importance of business and human rights implementation in the context of Bangladesh. So these are the three key issues I highlight for the question one. Moving on, question two, the key obstacles and drivers that need to be addressed. So the first obstacle, which is very timely for us, is the COVID-19 as a challenge. And we have been more than a year now struggling and trying to deal with the issues. It's a global challenge, and Bangladesh is no exception to it. And there we see how business and human rights is being affected because of the COVID-19 challenge. It can be connected to a further discussion that if I take this point into a larger extent, we can say pandemic as a challenge to the business and human rights. So today is COVID. You never know after 5 years what will be the challenge. So pandemic, particularly COVID, as a challenge. Then empowerment of workers. This is really very important point highlighted by one of the participants, expressing that how workers are least empowered in terms of, and empowerment also includes education. Empowerment also includes their self-awareness about the rights and to deal with the issues. And the drivers includes like organizations which will be facilitating different stakeholders who are going to be facilitated to these issues, and policies which will drive the issue into a particular extent. We move to the question number three. It says that concrete three recommendations, and I'm sure the recommendations we have accumulated are well pertinent. First one is that skillful workers creation, and I make it a nexus with our question number two, where we got the challenge that otherwise than skillful workers creations. I think it's a very dilemma for us to move ahead. And also we struggle these issues with respect to our workers who are immigrating abroad in Middle East and others. So we need to ensure skillful workers. Second, the most important in my view is that as one participant highlighted, is NAP, National Action Plan. We as we see the experiences of different countries, they have already developed this particular point, and as the moderator, you will also agree that this is the vital in the context of this country. The third one is also very vital, highlighted by one participant, is the dialogue and relationship building in every point. In every point includes in all aspects. Unless there are dialogues, there are communication, sittings and meetings, I think the issues will not be focused. The least and marginalized voice will not be heard. So I move to the question number four, which says that what are the key stakeholders? There, the first comment came as Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce. Different media, can play the prominent role as a stakeholder. So Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Media, as highlighted by a participant. Another participant highlighted issues like National Human Rights Commission of Bangladesh, which is a vital body, and of course other ministries. And the third participant, from another participant, we have extracted about Ministry of Labor and Employment, employers organization, workers organization, civil society. Even the role of ILO comes here as a very important point. So I think, yeah, these are all within the shortest possible time.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your moderation. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So now, may I now invite Group 2, Mr. Siddiq. So if you please, go ahead with your presentation. We'll be glad if you please do not repeat what just MD Hussain said.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sarwar, for giving me the floor. As we have been instructed to discuss the forum, for 30 minutes. We thought that we could actually be given the 30 minutes time, but we consumed time in introductions. Anyway, we had also the diverse background of discussant in the panel. Many of the discussion that has been discussed here most of the discussion has been covered by the group one. As you already request to sort of not to repeat the issues raised by the group one, I'm just the first question, the most pressing the most pressing business and human rights issues that has been discussed in our group is the interesting one. That is the one participant made that the case of sexual harassment for female internal migrant workers who are coming to work in the business hub districts, and also their child protections issues. That is a kind of concern the participant raised, especially working in his association. He found that. And then also one important point made regarding the absence of framework for the investment for the returnee migrants. So this is also one of the issues that has been discussed, and I think that has been rightly premised, because we cannot deny the contributions of the migrant workers, even though they do have separate regime for that. But for business and human rights discourse, if we cannot have any provisions for them, that is also will be a failure, because these populations are not small in number. Then the few common things. One interesting issues that has been said. Most of our discussion was on the issues, and many of the issues are overlapping with the drivers and obstacles as well, such as one of the issues is access to justice, that has already said. Then ensuring international standard in our policy formulations. These are also issues. Other issues that has already been said regarding the absence of legal framework for informal workers. So these are issues that we have discussed in our group. And if moving forward to the question number 2, if we look into the obstacles and the drivers, many of the issues can be converted into obstacles and drivers, such as one of the obstacle we can actually discuss about lack of campaign platform. As you all know that the lack of awareness regarding human rights is endemic, especially in the context of the developing countries like ours. So lack of campaign platform, as it is discussed by our eminent discussant, that the civil society platforms are shrinking. And so this has come out in the discussion of our group. We did not put that in the question number 2, but we can say that this is also one of the obstacles. And regarding the drivers, the driver can be.
Sorry, Siddiq Bhai, I'm extremely sorry. If you please just tell us the bullet points.
Okay, please. And the if we forward to the drivers, the driver can be coherent, making sort of the making availing social safety nets for the workers, and also formulating national policies in line with the international standard. This can be a good drivers as well for the promoting human rights discourse in Bangladesh. Moving forward to the third questions regarding the recommendation, I'll not repeat, as you all know that we need an action plan. And coming from the issues, one thing at least we can do at least immediately to formulate a code of conduct for the businessman that has been discussed for immediate recommendations and awareness raising. The common one regarding the third question, it is always common that key stakeholders are the common in numbers. We also discussed about employers organization involvement more and more, and imparting the business communities through multilateral platform, as well as NHRIs and CSOs that also discussed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siddiq Bhai. So Ms. Mehrona, do you please go ahead with your presentation again with some bullet points. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarwar. Okay, so the questions regarding the first question, what are the challenges. What are the pressing human rights, business and human rights issues? Like first point that has been raised is that the workers in Bangladesh are not aware of their legal rights. They're not aware of what are their rights are in the regulations of Bangladesh, in the labor laws and that, and they cannot understand the laws. That is one. Secondly, there is a lack of discussion on the business and human rights issues, because this needs to be done for raising awareness. Thirdly, there is lack of enforcement of environmental laws. So, and the BHR issues have not been integrated into all these laws. So these are the pressing the problems. The key obstacles, among the key obstacles, the firstly, it has been mentioned that there's lack of mutual trust among entrepreneurs and workers. Secondly, in regarding the RMG sector, it has been said that workers, there is lack of importance given on workers' health issues and hygiene. So this, of course, there was also another counter opinion that it may differ according to compliance and non-compliance factories, but it was mentioned by one of the RMG worker that there is not enough importance given on this aspect. Regarding the entrepreneur side, it was said that from their perspective, the increase of wage that has to be done every year by 5%, that causes trouble. That is an obstacle for investing in the human business and human rights issues. And at the same time, buyers are not increasing the price. So there is a pressure on the entrepreneurs. They cannot invest much and work much on the BHR issues. The third question, provide the recommendations. A number of I got a number of recommendations, like effort is needed from the government. It is, I've said before, that business and human rights issues are not included in the policy, so this needs to be brought into. Social movements are necessary. Then the trade unions, opinions of the trade unions, those needs to be brought into the forums and discussions in the sessions to develop understanding, and these can be reflected in the policies. Then individual responsibilities needs to be as clear, like what are the responsibilities of workers, what are the responsibilities of the businesses, the government. All this needs to be clear for having clear understanding of on the business and human rights issues. Then another recommendation was given, like to develop concrete ideas on how business and human rights issues can be brought into discourse.
Yeah, go ahead. I think
the incentive for also be a factor that was promoted.
I think your voice is breaking down, and I don't know. I mean, probably you have lost her. No, I mean she's there. Okay, so let me just conclude, since we are running out of time. The problem is the live, I mean, broadcast will I mean conclude or will be closed. I mean, if we go beyond the time. So I mean, to wrap up the session, I mean, thank you very much for your valuable inputs and suggestions. I mean, throughout the last 2 hours. So we have got some key issues that have been, I mean, addressed by the groups. So one is informal workers regulations, child labor and child protection issues, mobilization of people, migrant workers, absence of, I mean, framework for returning migrant workers, and can, I mean, lack of understanding among the people about the laws, policies, lack of, I mean, enforcement of environmental laws, and particularly the environmental consideration is missing in the, in the BHR policies and strategies. Coming to the second enabler issue, or the driver issue, and along with the challenges, you see COVID-19 or the pandemic is a challenge for the growth of, I mean, business and human rights, empowerment of the workers, and empowerment of the particularly women workers in the working industry. Self-awareness, definitely access to justice. Uh, I mean, uh, lack of campaign platform to mobilize a particular movement. Lack of, since the civil society, activism or movement is being shrinking in the context of Bangladesh. Another, obstacle is the lack of mutual trust among the responsible stakeholders. Another issue was workers' health and hygiene, wages of the workers, challenges relating to the investment. There are some recommendations also, and there are, the stakeholders definitely will come with the recommendations also. Coming from government, non-government, civil society, academia, or national human rights institutions will be the key stakeholders. To promote and to foster the growth of human rights business in Bangladesh. Coming to the concrete recommendations. So you see, skillful workers creation is one of the recommendations. Dialogue in every stages, and the core recommendation which we'll highlight is the developing or formulating a national action plan or national framework. On business and human rights, or at least we can go ahead with the code of conduct for businesses to make them responsible to ensure respect for business and human rights. And another recommendation was BHR should be included into the laws, policies, and strategies of Bangladesh. Coming to the recommendation, empowering or mobilizing civil society movements to make responsible the corporations or industries. Another recommendation was to increase the responsibility of the stakeholders. As you all know, that Bangladeshi laws, the existing laws have identified as responsible stakeholders, in respective laws, but there is no provision if those stakeholders do not comply with those provisions. So this lacuna should be addressed both in the laws and both in terms of enforcement also. So we see this as a biggest challenges to enforce human rights in the context of Bangladesh. So with this, we'll conclude this session with the roadmap, with the benchmark that we have discussed based on the discussion that we have had for the last 2 hours. It was an interactive, engaging discussion. We have learned a lot from each other, and we believe we will be continuing this discussion, and we will be moving forward. Based on the inputs, based on the discussion that we have. So may I now invite Harpreet, if you have any concluding remarks. Harpreet, are you listening us?
I believe that Harpreet may have gone on to the next session.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, since probably she might be engaged in some other stations. So, Dori will be concluding, right? Or is there any
Yes,
other
that's correct.
speaker from your end?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us. Particularly the panel speakers, the group moderators. You have given your valuable inputs, time, and suggestions. We'll be working on this, and we'll be back to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.